Hello and welcome to this quiz about meeting the needs of children with special educational needs and disabilities in early years settings. My name's Catherine Stinton and I'm an early years consultant and trainer. I've been a teacher in mainstream and specialist settings and an early years area Senko into local authorities. I write and deliver training all over the country and also volunteer for one morning a week at a local preschool, which I really enjoy. The children and families I've been lucky enough to work with for the last 25 years have taught me so much, and I'm still learning. That's why I love my job. If you'd like more support, then my Senko toolkit might be useful. This is a downloadable PDF file of documents which have been tried and tested in hundreds of early years settings. It includes a 23-point SEND checklist and action plan to help you identify and areas for development within your setting. It costs £5 and is available through my website www.catherinestinton.com. Just click on the Toolkit tab at the top of the web page. Will be based on these three documents: the statutory framework for the EYFS, the Equality Act, and the SEND Code of Practice. I'll go through the true and false questions in the first half of the session and give you the answers in the second half. You might like to pause the session between questions, particularly if you want to discuss the answer with colleagues, or you could pause the session after all 12 questions to discuss your answers. Let's get started. Question 1. All providers in receipt of government funding are expected to identify a named Senko. True or false? Question 2. The Senko must be an expert on all types of special educational needs and disabilities. Question 3. The Senko is the only person who can work with children with special educational needs and disabilities. Question 4. Practitioners within the setting don't have a statutory duty to discuss any concerns about a child's development with parents or carers. Question 5. Children with English as an additional language have a special educational need. Question 6. Only the setting-based Senko has a responsibility to identify children with delayed development. Question 7. All children with special educational needs have a disability. Question 8. The Senko advises and supports other practitioners in the setting. Question 9. The statutory framework for meeting children's special educational needs is different in schools. Question 10. Providers don't need to provide information for parents about how the setting supports children with special educational needs and disabilities. Question 11. Early years providers don't need to regularly review and evaluate the quality of support they offer or can access for children with special educational needs and disabilities. Question 12. The key person must help ensure that every child's learning and care is tailored to meet their individual needs. That's all the questions. You might want to pause the session to compare your answers with a colleague or just have a break before moving on to the answers. Before I give you the answers, I'd just like to make you aware of some training webinars I've recorded. They run in the same way as this session, but also have film clips, a range of activities and handouts. Each webinar comes with a personalised certificate on request, and you can contact me with any questions. To find out more, please go to the webinar section of my website. Let's move on to looking at the answers. Question 1. All providers in receipt of government funding are expected to identify a named SENCO. This is true. Maintained nurseries and schools must identify a SENCO, and the SENCO must be a qualified teacher. You'll see that other early years providers are expected to identify a SENCO, so it's not a must, but it would be very unusual for a setting not to have a named SENCO, and definitely wouldn't be regarded as good practice not to have a SENCO. If you're a childminder and part of a network, you can have a named SENCO for the network. Question 2. The SENCO must be an expert on all types of special educational needs and disabilities. This is false. It's impossible to be an expert on all types of SEND. You need to be an expert on the child. When I was an area SENCO and a child in a setting received a diagnosis, practitioners were often surprised that they were already using the strategies recommended in the report. This was because they'd identified the child's stage of development and worked in partnership with parents, using the child's interests to plan experiences to meet their needs. One of the roles of the SENCO is to make sure all practitioners understand the setting's approach to identifying and meeting the needs of children with SEND. Ultimately, the manager of the setting is responsible, and the SENCO can only fulfill their role effectively if they have the support of their manager and adequate time to carry out their responsibilities. Question 3. The SENCO is the only person who can work with children with special educational needs and disabilities. This is false. It wouldn't be good practice for the SENCO to be the only practitioner working with children with SEND. All practitioners need to spend time with the child and be aware of support strategies in place so the child receives a consistent approach, feels successful, and has high self-esteem. The key person is the one who knows the child best and has a close relationship with the parent. So they should continue to take the lead in assessments, observations, discussions, and transitions, with support from the SENCO if needed. Question 4. Practitioners within the setting don't have a statutory duty to discuss any concerns about a child's development with parents or carers. This is false. We must discuss any concerns about a child's development with parents. This isn't a should, it's a must. It's a statutory duty. This isn't easy, and you can watch my free webinar, Working in Partnership, which talks about the importance of a good induction process and gives a range of open-ended questions to ask to encourage parents to share relevant information about their child. Just click on the webinar section of my website to find it. Remember, when you have a discussion with parents, to make it clear that they are in control and they will decide what will happen next. Give them time to think about what you've said. Don't ask for a decision straight away. And set another date to meet in a week or so. If you have a discussion with parents and they don't give permission for you to make any referrals or provide further intervention, you need to make a written record of the discussion, date it, and ask parents to sign. There's a sample form you can use in my SENCO toolkit, which is available on my website. I've also written an article about discussing concerns with parents, which is available on the useful links section of my website. Question 5. Children with English as an additional language have a special educational need. This is false. The SEND Code of Practice says that difficulties related to learning English should not be seen as a special educational need. Of course, some children with English as an additional language may have a special educational need. This is why partnership with parents is so important, as is observing all aspects of a child's development. Question 6. Only the setting-based SENCO has a responsibility to identify children with delayed development. This is false. It's completely unrealistic to expect the SENCO to be the only person to identify possible delays in a child's development. This is why all practitioners within the setting should have a good understanding of typical child development, so they are in a good position to identify delays and ask the SENCO for support if necessary. We can't meet children's needs unless we identify them, and we know the earlier we intervene, the better outcomes there are for children. Question 7. All children with special educational needs have a disability. This is false. A special educational need is a learning need. When a child has a greater difficulty in learning than the majority of their peers and is needing provision which is additional to or different from that which is offered generally for the other children in the setting. And that quote is taken from the SEND Code of Practice. Many children and young people who have a special education need have a disability under the Equality Act. The legal definition gives quite a low threshold, and a child doesn't need a diagnosis in order to have a disability. Early years settings and schools have a statutory duty under the Equality Act to make reasonable adjustments to meet the needs of children with a disability. And there's a useful handout about this under the useful links section of my website. Question 8. The SENCO advises and supports other practitioners in the setting. This is true. All practitioners within the setting need to understand the role of the SENCO, that it's to advise and support, not to take responsibility for all the assessments, observations, and statutory paperwork. This is why the role of the manager is vital. They need to offer support to the SENCO, as well as regular supervision and a job description which is reviewed at least once a year. Question 9. The statutory framework for meeting children's special educational needs is different in schools. This is false. The statutory framework is the same in early years settings, schools and higher education. They would all need to follow the graduated response in the Code of Practice of assess, plan, do, review. Question 10. Providers don't need to give information to parents about how the setting supports children with special educational needs and disabilities. This is false. I would advise asking parents how they would prefer this information to be presented. Policies aren't usually very parent-friendly, so you could consider writing a leaflet or recording a short film clip. Explain the role of your SENCO, other professionals you work with regularly, training attended, and how you ensure all practitioners within the setting are supported to reflect on their own practice and meet the needs of each child. When children with SEND transfer to another setting, it would be helpful to either give parents an exit questionnaire or have a conversation about how they felt you met their child's needs, what they felt about your induction process, do they think they were given useful information, and is there anything they could suggest for you to improve what you already do? Question 11. Early years providers don't need to regularly review and evaluate the quality of support they offer or can access for children with SEND. This is false. The Equality Act says that any reasonable adjustments you make must be anticipatory. You must consider how you would meet the needs of children with SEND and where you would seek further information before a parent makes an initial inquiry. In England, your local authority local offer website should include information about what's available. You could also contact your local children's centre or local authority early years department. I'd recommend reviewing on a yearly basis how well equipped you are to provide support to children with special educational needs in your setting and where you go for further support and advice. Question 12. The key person must help ensure that every child's learning and care is tailored to meet their individual needs. This is true, and the key word here is every child, including children with SEND. So we're back to the role of SENCO being to advise and support, as it's the key person who knows the child best. They know their interests, their family, their strengths, and areas for development. It's also the role of each key person to know what services are available for families in their local area, signposting them to health visitors, children's centres, and voluntary organisations. I hope you found that useful. I post regularly on my Facebook page and Twitter account, and if you're interested in any training, please take a look at my website for further information, and don't hesitate to get in touch if you have any queries. I'll be really pleased to hear from you. Thanks for listening and enjoy the rest of your day.